Women who masturbate regularly. The deeper psychological truth, when society talks about female sexuality, it's usually clouded by myths, stereotypes, and silence. Most people think female self-pleasure is rare, dirty, or just about temporary relief, but psychology reveals something far more profound. Women who masturbate regularly don't just shape their sexual identity, they reshape their entire psychological landscape, and the ripple effects? They touch confidence, emotional health, relationships, resilience, and even decision-making in daily life. Let's peel back the layers. Higher levels of self-esteem confidence doesn't come from makeup, clothes, or compliments. It comes from knowing yourself deeply. Women who masturbate consistently develop a stronger sense of body ownership. They learn what feels good, what doesn't, and what boundaries they refuse to cross. This inner clarity often translates into outer confidence. Psychologists call this embodied self-esteem, confidence that isn't faked or borrowed, but rooted in real self-awareness. Such women tend to carry themselves with more assurance, resist toxic relationships because they know their worth, communicate openly about their needs instead of suppressing them. This self-esteem doesn't just show in the bedroom, it shows in work, social interactions, and leadership roles. Reduced risk of toxic dependency in relationships. One of the silent traps many women fall into is emotional dependency on a partner, relying on someone else to define their worth or fulfill their needs. But women who masturbate regularly often avoid this trap. Why? Because they don't see intimacy as the only source of validation. Instead, they approach relationships with balance. They give love without becoming needy, and they receive love without becoming dependent. This balance makes their relationships healthier, stronger, and more stable. But here's the twist. 8. Improved decision-making and emotional resilience. It might sound strange, but self-pleasure can actually improve decision-making. How? Because regular orgasms regulate dopamine and serotonin, the same brain chemicals tied to impulse control, patience, and mood balance. Women who masturbate regularly often report feeling less anxious in stressful situations, being more decisive under pressure, recovering faster from emotional setbacks. In other words, masturbation may act like a psychological reset button, keeping emotions in check and sharpening mental clarity. A hidden link to creativity. Here's a fascinating insight. Many creative breakthroughs are tied to altered mental states. Masturbation, through the release of neurochemicals and the relaxation of mental barriers, often creates the perfect conditions for creative thinking. Some women describe their post-orgasm state as a space where ideas flow more freely, whether it's in art, problem-solving, or innovation. This means that women who masturbate regularly might be unconsciously training their brains to think outside the box. Challenging cultural narratives and building inner strength. Society has always tried to police female desire. Women are told, "Good girls don't do that. It's dirty, shameful, or sinful." A woman should only feel pleasure with her husband. Yet, women who embrace masturbation quietly rebel against this programming. Every time they choose self-exploration, they are, in a sense, rewiring their psychology. They're refusing to let external narratives dictate how they feel about their bodies. This rebellion doesn't make them reckless. It makes them stronger. It builds resilience against cultural pressure and gives them the courage to own their sexuality without apology. And this strength spills over into every other part of their lives. Final deep insight before the cliffhanger. So now, we see the bigger picture. Women who masturbate regularly aren't just chasing pleasure. They're building confidence, strengthening emotional resilience, avoiding toxic dependencies, tapping into creativity, challenging societal control. In short, they're reclaiming ownership of their bodies, their emotions, and their lives. Women who masturbate regularly. psychology, and hidden human behavior. When people hear the word masturbation, especially when it comes to women, they often reduce it to something purely physical, something secret, taboo, or shameful. But the truth is far more fascinating. Science shows that female self-pleasure is not just about temporary satisfaction. It has a direct impact on psychology, behavior, relationships, and even long-term health. Women who masturbate regularly aren't just indulging in a private act, they're shaping their mental resilience, self-image, and emotional stability. Let's break it down step by step. Women become more in tune with their bodies. Think about it. Most people struggle to communicate what they really like during intimacy, but women who explore themselves develop a deeper awareness of what brings them pleasure. This body literacy removes confusion, reduces insecurity, and replaces it with confidence. In fact, studies in the Journal of Sex Research reveal that women who masturbate regularly report better sex lives, stronger orgasms, and more fulfilling relationships. Why? Because they know themselves, and that self-awareness translates into better communication with their partners. But here's where it gets more interesting. 2. Masturbation as natural stress relief. In a world where stress and anxiety are at an all-time high, women who masturbate may unknowingly be practicing one of the most natural forms of therapy. Here's what happens. Every orgasm floods the brain with dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins, the same chemicals linked to happiness and bonding. At the same time, cortisol, the stress hormone, drops significantly. The result? A calmer mind, improved mood, and even better sleep. Many women describe feeling reset after masturbation, like their body and mind have returned to balance, but the benefits don't stop there. Stronger and healthier relationships. There's a common myth that masturbation reduces interest in a partner. The opposite is true. When women take charge of their own pleasure, they're less dependent on their partner to complete them. This takes away pressure and makes intimacy a shared experience instead of a burden. Psychologists also note that women who masturbate are often more adventurous and creative in the bedroom. Instead of seeing sex as routine, they see it as exploration, leading to greater satisfaction for both partners. But that's just the emotional side. Physically, something else is happening. A boost to the immune system and hormones. Every orgasm stimulates the immune system by raising levels of certain antibodies that fight infections. This means women who masturbate regularly might actually have stronger defenses against illness. And here's another fascinating discovery. Sexual arousal, whether through masturbation or partnered intimacy, helps balance hormones like estrogen and testosterone. This hormonal regulation supports better moods, more energy, and even healthier skin. But beyond the body, there's something much more powerful happening psychologically. Breaking free from shame and guilt for centuries, societies around the world have placed restrictions, shame and silence around female sexuality. Women have been taught to suppress desire, hide pleasure, or feel guilty about it. Yet women who masturbate consistently tend to break free from this conditioning. They see their sexuality not as something dirty, but as something natural, empowering, and deeply human. Psychologists call this sexual autonomy, the ability to set boundaries, communicate openly, and own one's desires without fear. In other words, women who masturbate regularly aren't just experiencing physical benefits. They're reshaping their confidence, self-respect, and independence. Final thought. What sets women who masturbate regularly apart? They're often more self-aware and confident, more relaxed and stress-free, more fulfilled in relationships, healthier, both physically and emotionally, freer from guilt, shame, and cultural pressure. At its core, masturbation is more than pleasure. It's self-discovery, empowerment, and emotional liberation. Women who masturbate regularly. Surprising psychology. Facts. When most people think about female masturbation, they assume it's only about pleasure. But psychology shows it goes much deeper. It influences emotional balance, mental clarity, and even physical health. Research has found that women who engage in self-pleasure regularly often display higher confidence, sharper self-awareness, and stronger emotional resilience. But that's just scratching the surface. Greater connection with their bodies. Women who explore their own pleasure become more familiar with their anatomy. This awareness allows them to clearly communicate their needs during intimacy, leading to more satisfying experiences, stronger orgasms, reduced shame, and healthier self-esteem. Studies published in the Journal of Sex Research confirm that women who understand their bodies often enjoy deeper relationship satisfaction. Stress relief and better. Sleep masturbation triggers the release of dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins, the body's natural mood enhancers. It also lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. As a result, women often feel calmer and more relaxed, with many reporting improved sleep quality after orgasm. Stronger romantic relationships. Contrary to outdated myths, self-pleasure doesn't reduce interest in a partner. In fact, women who masturbate frequently often bring creativity, openness, and less pressure into their sex lives. Intimacy becomes a shared journey rather than a burden of expectations. Immune boost and hormonal balance orgasms are linked to better immune responses, thanks to higher levels of antibodies that fight infections. Regular arousal also helps regulate hormones like estrogen and testosterone, promoting emotional stability and overall well-being.